Everyone looks at school ratings first, but let me show you why that might lead you to picking the wrong school. And so, specifically, today we're going to be covering how to understand school ratings and what they actually mean, what Charlotte school zones look like in terms of how they work, what actually matters when you're picking a school for your household, for your loved ones, and also a few tips to find the right fit. And this video is actually inspired because I've had, at this point, hundreds of people that have moved to Charlotte that I've helped. And many of those are either investors that are looking for areas with good schools, people that are thinking about starting a family, people with kids that are shopping for themselves. And there's a couple of interesting things, at least as it relates to real estate, about this. But I've seen a pretty large sample size of how people look for schools. And recently I had some wonderful, wonderful clients, Jared and Emily, who went through this process. And they had probably one of the most thorough ways that they went about it, and also one of the simplest. And so I'm going to share their method of exactly how they found schools that were the right fit for them moving here from Florida, not knowing anything about the area. And I'm really excited to share that. I'm going to also give you first some context so that we are speaking the same language, so to speak, even know what we're talking about, because there's some unique things about how schools and school systems and all that stuff works in Charlotte that's very different than where you're coming from, depending on where you're coming from. And for those of you that might not be aware, you may notice that there's kind of two extremes within when you see realtors talking about schools. Either people that are saying, oh, this school is the best, or people that are saying, about any particular school, or people who are saying that they can't talk about it at all. And both of those, I think, are doing you a disservice, to be honest. It is true that realtors and any licensed real estate professional cannot recommend individual school zones, and you might think that's insane. But it's for two reasons. One, the idea of a good school is incredibly subjective and personal. Same thing on safety. I saw an Instagram reel about this recently that I'll probably make a very hot take on later today. So if you want to see that, go follow me on Instagram at Lucas Roller, just like my name, right there. At Lucas Roller, no space, no punctuation, no nothing, just at Lucas Roller on Instagram. But it's true. So for fair housing law, licensed people cannot say that an area is good or bad, or a school zone is good or bad, or anything, because it could stigmatize the area. And more importantly, because different people have different requirements, different things that they're looking for when they're looking at school zones, areas, safety. Like one of the examples I always use is like my big little sister, my older sister, who is much smaller than me. I'm 6'6". I am, depending on the time of year and how much pie and cookies I've had around the holidays, anywhere from 220 to 240. I'm 6'6", or 2 meters for you folks across the pond on the metric system. And like, I'm a big dude, right? My sister's 5'9", I want to say, and like not, definitely not 240, not 220, maybe like 100 I don't even want to guess. 120, 140 pounds. She's petite. And for her, like, I have lived in a not great part of Syracuse, New York before. And for those of you that are familiar with Syracuse, it is, some of the not great areas are very not great. And I felt, at least where I was at, I felt perfectly comfortable because I'm a big dude. I have enough street smarts to not put myself in bad situations. But for her, like, she would just not feel comfortable there at all because she's not 6'6". She's not 240 pounds. Or because I've been meal prepping and working out at the gym now 220. Proudly. I'm off on a side tangent. This is my first time doing this in a while. So Today, like I said, we're going to talk about how to find the right schools for what you're looking for, and I'm going to give you the method because again, your requirements, every single family, parent, um, individual that is just looking at schools just for investment purposes or for any purpose or no purpose, you will have different requirements for what you're looking for, different things that matter to you. And I'm going to give you the tools and the resources to find the answer that you seek. I'm not going to give you some generic list or set of ratings that everybody copy pastes because one, even if I wanted to, I couldn't. But two, I'd be doing you a disservice if I did because there's some much better options out there, probably for just about everybody than whatever the top rating systems show. So, and I am curious if you are either in some neighborhood or suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina, and you either really like your school or you have feedback on specific school zones or anything, feel free to drop it down in the comments below because your personal experience matters. And if you are researching, comment below what you're researching, and then maybe some folks can share their experiences. I will also say there are a few sourpusses on the YouTubes that have nothing going on in their lives and just like to spread hilariously wild and untrue stories. I can't think of anything in particular. It's just I get so many comments of people being like, Charlotte's full, try South Carolina. South Carolina's full, try Atlanta. Because again, there's some old fogies that got nothing going on and like to leave comments. So take everything with a grain of salt. But we have a very good community on this channel and on the main channel as well. Let's get into it. So part one, understanding the school ratings and systems. There's 3 or 4 different resources that are pretty widely known, widely talked about, and I'm going to just cover a few of those right now. Probably the most well-known and the most famous is this website called Grade Schools. And so I'm going to show you here a few. Let's just look public school zones in I don't know where. I guess this is what happens when you've been living here for a while. You pick up a little bit of a twang. At least you can. So you can put in any address. You can see what the school zone school ratings are. And there's also one other site you can use to verify school ratings for this year and next school year. That is the Mecklenburg County GIS. Let's see, where is it? This tool is so good. It's the Geo portal. Okay, so you go to gis.mecnc.gov and then scroll down to the Geo portal. They have their little disclaimer there. But if you put in any address, like I have a listing that it just listed, it's coming soon. If you are looking for no HOA on an acre, hit me up. But you can see here schools, it shows 2025-2026 school years zoning, and then same for 26-27, all the nearest magnet schools, and it shows all of them, so it's a lot. But magnet options, and then there's a lot of other resources in here too, like utilities and parks and libraries, community stuff, all sorts of things. But so you can look up any address on here. It'll give you this overall ranking and then student progress and test score ranking. And there's also on I think here we go. There's a great article that explains how they make all of these rankings and what they really mean according to them. And also, what they don't tell you, which is again one of the things that we're going to get to when we start talking about what my clients were doing. This is one of them. Another one is niche.com. Let's see here. And you can search again, like K through 12 schools or districts in the Charlotte area. And it will be able to give you rankings and ideas for different school districts and individual schools as well. And they have most of the different schools and school districts. Every once in a while, you'll come across schools that just don't have any data. I'm not entirely sure why that is. And sometimes, like, niche will have it, but grade schools won't. So those are a couple of phenomenal sites and resources. And then there's also the North Carolina, I think it's called School Report Cards. Yeah, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. They have so much data that you can see and look at and really get a feel for. But all of this is for my highly educated, sure, but highly logical, data-driven folks. What you really got to look at for all of this is actually the less scientific data, in my opinion. I'll give you a couple of stories, a couple of examples, and then we'll circle back to this. So I was actually home educated all the way until I went to university. I went to Purdue. I studied engineering there. I got a degree in robotics engineering and automated systems integration engineering. And it's like in our family, we had a lot of value on education. My mom's a teacher, right? And so anybody that knew us or knew the people that we hung out with or knew the other families that we would do educational stuff with knew how much we valued education because that was the culture of our school, so to speak. For many of my friends that growing up that were not in that did not homeschool, that were in public schools or private schools, some of them, their parents really, like my best friend growing up, his mom really wanted him to be focused on school, but he was going to a school where even though she was that way and it was a good school, the general culture of the school was not that way. And it was actually a private school that had very good ratings, very good metrics, but that just wasn't the culture. And then conversely, I've seen people that have moved here and moved to a school district where, at least what they've told me, is that everybody's very focused on education. And even the parents, that was a bonus for them. But for them and their family, they weren't looking for a school that just put this huge emphasis on education. They just wanted a school that was okay. But because there were a lot of other families and just like the culture of the school was really focused on education, their kids started to really enjoy school and excel because that was what the culture was. And so one of the things that none of these data points will directly tell you, but you can definitely get a better feel for through conversation and some of these less scientific ways of talking or collecting data points, is to just talk to the school admin, talk to the one of the assistant principals, talk to the staff, and just see what are their attitudes, what are the attitudes of other parents there, and really get a feel for what it's like in ways that this very wonderful, very detailed set of data might not be able to really tell you. And again, this is so much more like, this is dozens of data points. There is absolutely no way, no matter how good it is, that you can take all those data points and reduce it down to a single number, because that means that you're just not looking at some of the data points, because they're not going to all be the same. So anyways, that's my little soapbox on that in particular. So just to look at this specifically, though, let me go back over here. So a lot of people will see 5 or 6 or something, and think that that is bad. It's definitely not the best, but at least for when you're looking at grade schools in particular, 5 to 6 means that it's performing around the state average. 7 to 10 means that it is above state average. So like a 7 to a 10 is considered to be like one of the better or best schools, and 5 to 6 is considered to be at least in line with what's acceptable for the state. So yeah, it's something to really take into consideration. And also, I mean, I'll add one last final thing here. Looking at like the all the data here, right? There are programs and opportunities and extracurriculars and all sorts, activities, stuff that you can do at different schools where they have resources for different things. Like some schools are going to have, you know, a lot more sports and athletics than other schools. And for me growing up, like sports and athletics was very important for many clients that I've had that have moved here, for their families and for their kids. Sports and athletics are very important. And so that might be something that would be worthwhile to look into school by school after you narrow down a research list, just to make sure that they're actually going to have those amenities and things that are important to you. Because I can tell you also, like for me, I got involved in competitive robotics. That's how I ended up actually going to school for that. Before I got involved with competitive robotics, I had zero, and I do mean zero, interest in school. And if it wasn't for that, I swear, I'm not sure that anybody, even my own mother, bless her heart, could have encouraged me strongly enough for me to actually finish my high school degree. Because I just didn't care about school until I was like, oh, I can like apply this to something that I enjoy and seems worthwhile. And I have friends in it, and everybody's really motivated, and I'm getting positively reinforced for taking an interest in this. And so some of those extra activities and things, I cannot overemphasize just how important those really are. Because it's something I'm really passionate about, especially like I mentored kids in competitive robotics when I was in high school and a little bit in college. It's so important, man. I cannot overemphasize that. So that's my spiel on understanding school ratings and a little bit of my thoughts on it. 2, let's talk about the next section, which is how do Charlotte school zones work and what are the schooling options. So there are 2 types of school districts. There are school districts by county, and then there are also some special school districts as well. So, like for instance, there is the general Cabarrus County school system, and then there is the Concord school system. And so Concord is in Cabarrus County. For whatever reason, I don't know all the history. They have their own school system in addition to the county one. Now, for the general assigned public schools, your address will determine what the assigned school is. Boundaries for where those school districts are, like redistricting happens pretty frequently, especially because Charlotte has grown so quickly. I feel like especially a couple of years ago it was a lot more so than now. It's a little bit more stable, but it's like boundaries do change. And so particularly if you're kind of between 2 different school districts, it is very possible that you might end up might end up having your school district redistricted. You can either attend your assigned school or apply to magnet and charter school options. And also, I don't fully understand how it works, but there is some way that you can basically write a note saying that there's a family reason that you cannot attend a certain school and that you need to attend a different school. And as long as you provide transportation, I believe you can get into just about any school, even if it's not zoned for it. You might not be getting bus service, but it is an option. Now, there are two ways to get into the schools. Again, the actual zoned neighborhood school. If you live in the zone, like, it's pretty much a guaranteed spot. You're going to either walk to it or bus to school. And there's no, like, I think you have to register, but there's not like an application. You're not hoping to get in, you're just registering. Now, option two is a magnet or charter option. And so for magnet schools, they have special programs which can be, depending on the magnet school, STEM, arts, language. There is an application required. It uses a lottery system, and depending on where you are, you may or may not need transportation. And they do also sometimes have like zoned bus pickups, like outside of my old gym. They would have drop off and pick up in the parking lot for one of the, I think it was one of the charter schools. So parents would go and just like drive to that parking lot with their kids, and then their kids would get on the bus and then go. Yeah, and charter schools work pretty much the same. The only difference is, like, magnets are specifically oriented around something, like some special program like STEM, arts, language, whatever. And then for the charter school options, they are almost run like a private school, but they are publicly funded. And as long as they continue to maintain their scores and that sort of, like, scores and performance, they're allowed to have a little bit more leeway in terms of curriculum and activities and, you know, that sort of thing. So especially when you are researching schools, one of the things we do is, if you have a list of school options that are really important to you to get the right, you know, specific schools, we will check the actual address, because you can even, I've seen this before, one side of a street can all go to one school, the other side of the same street can all go to a different school. You will see school zone information on sites like Zillow. Do not trust it. All of the home sites exist only to give you just enough of what feels like good information to get you to give them your information so then they can resell it. It is not reliable information. I cannot tell you how many times, dozens of times, where I've had clients send me homes that were not on the search that I sent them, because Zillow said, Homes.com said, Realtor.com said, and Redfin said that the school was X and it was actually Y. It said it was B and it was actually C. You know, and so just a sidebar, don't trust anything on there other than the basic information, because guess where all of those sites get the basic information? They copy paste it off of the official broker's MLS. All the other stuff that they add on there is unreliable, because they rip it from random places or make it up as they go. Check the boundaries carefully. So, elementary feeds in middle into high school. Research the full path, not just the elementary school, not just the middle school, not just the high school, unless you just don't need the elementary or middle school. And I'm also going to add on that too. I've had so many times where people don't even have kids, right? But they're buying a home with a school zone for eventually having kids. If that is your purpose, if that is your thought process, I applaud you for trying to think ahead, plan ahead. Schools change. Ask any teacher, ask any principal, any school admin. They will all tell you schools change. Rezoning occurs. When you buy, particularly in some of the most desirable, choice, hyped up, whatever you want to call it, school districts that people spend money to be in, whether I think it's worthwhile or not. Again, I bite my tongue for compliance reasons when we're talking about individual individual things. Um, but I'm gonna be so real. The people that are the most affluent care about schools the most, and they're willing to just pay whatever it costs. I have many clients like that, and I love them, and they are very happy with their options. And as long as they're happy, great. If you have a budget, you got to make sure you're spending your budget on things you're actually going to use. And so do not buy a home for school districts that you may or may not ever use. Because again, if you don't have kids, you're buying a school zone for having kids. Why would you be paying for that school to just maybe not have, still even be zoned for the same school by the time you actually get to that point? And so my recommendation is always buy with the next 3 to 5 years in mind. Do not do further than that, because even 3 to 5 years out, nobody knows what we're going to be doing. Like think about this. 5 years ago, we were in the middle of COVID. Like nobody knew what the future was gonna be. And right now, nobody knows what 2030 is gonna be like. Probably pretty wild. Probably I'm gonna look back and be like, remember back in 2020 when I was a strapping young fellow? Uh, like nobody knows what the future holds, and so you can guess. And if you got the money where you're like, if this extra $150,000 just evaporated, I'm cool with that, because it would just, if it doesn't evaporate and if we're able to be in a pretty decent school district, then great. If that's your mindset and you can legitimately just say that you don't care about it, then by all means, that is the better choice for you. If that is not your situation, because again, I have many clients, I've worked with many people that are in that situation, that is their mindset, it is the right choice for them. So if that's you, then again, go ahead and do that. Love to help you. I've worked with a lot of people where that is the case. I've also worked with a lot of people where that's not the case. And so if you're gonna be real sad if you're losing out on those schools that you paid for, then don't pay for them until you're actually going to use them. And yes, it's going to be a little bit more of a pain, but got to use what you got. And what you got is a little, a willingness to have a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of, just a little bit more chaos in order to get the certainty and a better deal on whatever it is that you are buying. So, if as you're looking through schools, again, start making a list of schools that are acceptable, that are going to fit what you're looking for, and then we'll take that list of schools and actually start researching homes that match that. So that is part 2. We're going to get into part 3, but that was how did the school zones actually work. Part 3, what the ratings don't tell you. And so there's a few things. I already covered some of this, but there's a few additional things I want to talk about. Teacher quality is a big one. And coming from a household that, again, my mom was a teacher, and education was very important in our home. I know a lot of teachers. I'm friends with teachers. My mom's friends were teachers. I grew up around teachers. It is so important to understand both the teachers that are at the school and what is the culture of the teachers at the school. What is the culture of the resources and support, both financial, but I can tell you what is way more important than financial support is the emotional support, the emotional resources that are given to teachers. Because ever since COVID, it has been very hard to be a teacher. I have people that have worked for me. I have people that I'm dear friends with who are teachers who love kids to death, and they love helping them so very much. But some schools are really good about supporting their teachers. And if they have kids that are being problematic and just disrupting class, starting fights, all sorts of stuff, some schools will just be like, oh, that's the teacher's problem. And some schools will be like, we need to give the teacher some support in helping take care of this. And if the kid is not getting encouraged at home to get their act together, then at some point there needs to be consequences for the kid, for the student. And so, like, again, because I have some very close friends that are teachers, so I get these calls every single, or I won't say every single day. I do get calls from people like you looking to move every single day. But in terms of calls from friends that are teachers, I've gotten many calls of people after very good days where they had support from their admin, and also many more calls from them complaining and, or I shouldn't say complaining, venting about how they are getting absolutely no support and no help from the school admin. And the school admin's just kind of burying their head in the sand because they don't want to deal with it and they don't know what to do. And when that is the culture of the school, teachers do not stay. They get the most inexperienced teachers because all the experienced ones know not to go there, don't want to go there. If they do accidentally go there, they don't stay there. And even if they did, they're not happy. And so unhappy people make other, particularly very formable, very malleable people, little people, also unhappy. And it just creates unhappy soup. And at least I don't want anybody I care about to be marinating in unhappy soup. Want them to be marinating in happy soup. And so, if you can look at the school ratings, but if you don't look at what's really the culture of the teachers, like, is it something where it's going to attract and retain good teachers? Sooner or later, that's inevitably going to catch up with you no matter what the stats say. On the flip side also, are the kids, the students happy? How do they actually deal with bullying? Does it feel safe? What's the general vibe? Is it something where you can tell the kids that are there are excited to be there, or are they just like counting down the seconds till they get out of out of the government-funded child prisons? Not literally, but the education establishments. And if you can't tell, I was extremely ADHD as a child, and so I just, like, school was not for me until I found something I really cared about, and then I got so activated and excited. But I had a lot of friends that I grew up with who just, like, they felt like they were, just going to jail every day, where they just had to show up and sit in the chair and pretend to learn, and they just didn't care. So is the culture not only of the teachers but also of the students there? Like, go and visit the school. Go and talk to the school admin. Call them up. Send them emails. Ask questions. They're, from what I've heard, very helpful. And then also look at the real class sizes. So there are some highly rated schools that have much larger class sizes, and also some lower rated schools that have much smaller class sizes. And so it's something to take into consideration too, because there's this confirmation bias effect that happens that I've noticed, where the highest rated schools attract people who, as a household, value education the most. And so if you have a 10 rated school, hypothetically, right? And they don't really have great resources, they don't really have great teachers, and they have, let's say 30, 40 kids per class. Would you rather have that, where it's really just like the kids' parents are all really the ones that are motivating and carrying the school ratings? Or would you rather have like a 7-rated school where it's 15 to 18 kids per class, much smaller class sizes, the teachers are really caring, and it's like there's just some kids in there that are doing their best and making progress, but they're not necessarily just having daddy's money pay for all of their tutoring lessons and other things to be able to juice the school rating statistics, which is one of those things where you cannot just look at a single number and then make a conclusion about the entire school, because there's so many important data points. you just can't really boil it down. And then I mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. All of the programs, what do they have beyond just testing? Just beyond standardized tests? Because guess what? Standardized tests do not pay the bills. Having real skills and real interests and an excitement and curiosity for the world that then puts people on a path to where, like, again, I have an engineering degree. There is nothing I do that is, in a traditional sense, engineering. Everything I do is, like, I use a lot of my engineering degree. I use a lot of the things I learned in high school, because especially because I was able to have a very STEM oriented high school experience. Um, I'm not working an engineering job. I'm helping people relocate to Charlotte, right? No standardized test. Like, even the real estate exam, I learned nothing useful other than like a few things of like do's and don'ts for compliance. And any at least any honest licensed person will tell you the same thing. So what are the non-test focused programs that they have, like art and music and athletics and creative learning and sports teams, theater programs, STEM clubs or STEM activities, special needs support. Like, what are the things that are not going to show up on a standardized test that they have, that are resources? Like, I know I've met people here that graduated. Actually, a good friend of mine, his son graduated and is had so many AP credits that he's getting a 4-year degree in 2 years, from a very good school here in a couple hours from here in South Carolina. And that would not be possible if they had not gone, if they had not chosen to go to a school district that was, rated well, but had those sort of opportunities that, again, don't just show up in the school rating. And then also one final thing I'm very passionate about, like, what is the learning style of your child, your student? If relevant, right? If you don't have kids, this is not relevant. But one of the things that helped me so much growing up was being able to study in creative ways, especially being undiagnosed ADHD as hell. I got diagnosed later on, actually when I was in college. But I was able to learn and go all the way through high school, get great grades, be able to, again, get into, with scholarships, academic scholarships, get into Purdue, which is very, very excellent engineering school. And, thank goodness, bless up for that, because I literally could not afford to go to any school if I hadn't been able to go to Purdue, because in-state there was like, I think I paid like $4,000. I think it was $4,600 before scholarships per semester. And I like, with how my family grew up, if that had not been possible, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so the reason I was able to make it through high school, make it through a lot of my earlier educational experiences, was because I had the flexibility for my learning style. I'm very tactile. I'm very visual. And so being able to have lots of visual textbooks, lots of very tactile experiences was super important for me. And I was able to be competitive and challenged, but not too competitive and not too challenged, to where I would lose interest. And so every single person, every single student is different, but I cannot emphasize enough just how important that is. And then that wraps up part 3. Part 4 is actually getting into, let me stand up here, I've been sitting too long. Some real Charlotte school comparisons. We're actually going to skip that, because I'm not sure how detailed I could get without getting into non-compliant territory. Yeah, let's talk about, for part 4, part 5, whatever. Let's talk about how to pick the right school. and specifically what my clients Jared and Emily did that I thought was absolutely so smart. So step one is to go through all of the different ratings and rankings and options available to you and start making somewhat of a short list. And the goal is to keep it very broad at this point. It's actually very similar to what we do when we're looking at homes and trying to select different areas and neighborhoods. And your goal is basically to just narrow down, like, what are some of the options? We have hundreds and hundreds of schools. So being able to narrow it down to at least kind of directions or zones that are going to work, especially if you're also taking other things into consideration, like commute, that sort of thing, you're going to be able to probably narrow it down to, on the low side, 3 to 5, on the high side, maybe 10 to 12 school options. And that gives you a starting point because it gives you an actual list that then you can begin to ascertain the pieces of data and information about each of those that are important to you to start narrowing that down further. Number two is what I'm going to encourage is to actually go and, email the staff if you're out of town, set up calls with them. They're very helpful, especially a lot of the assistant principals. It's pretty easy to find their information online, find their emails online. So go and do that. And then when you come and visit Charlotte, hit me up. We do a free 20-minute Charlotte visiting planning call where we'll give you an itinerary of neighborhoods, areas, suburbs, local highlights. We'll give you literally like a step-by-step tour itinerary of things to go and check out to be able to get like the full flavor of what Charlotte's really like. And we'll also help you find the people you need to reach out to, principals, assistant principals, that sort of thing, to get your questions answered. And from there, you'll usually be able to narrow it down at least a couple more schools so that now you're maybe somewhere in that 2 to 4 range, somewhere in that 10 to 12 school range. And again, ask them about the things that are important to you. Look for any signs of happy and engaged teachers and staff and kids, and go tour the schools. Again, when you actually get here, tour the schools. Look for happy, engaged students. Look for clean, safe building, organized classrooms, really engaged and friendly teachers. If you're seeing stressed out, unhappy teachers and staff and admin, disorganized schools that are just chaotic, that sort of things, if the kids are all just bored or seem like they're afraid, those are probably red flags. But then also, if you want to talk to also current parents of those schools, you're going to keep narrowing it down at each step. So this, I don't even know what step this is, step 4 probably. Talk to current parents. I'm happy to connect my clients with parents of kids that are at these schools, because they'll be able to give you so much information and so much of their experience, and the do's and the don'ts, and they have this and they don't have that. I wish they did, but we had found this workaround, and so really it's fine. Like, they're able to give you so much nuance and unfiltered, unbiased, unmotivated context that obviously it's not possible to do that for like 20 different schools or even 10 different schools. But once you have it down to a few that you're really trying to understand and feel out, and you're trying to figure out, okay, are these 3 school options all acceptable to us? That is a phenomenal way to really feel out what the school experience is going to be like. And you can ask them, like, do your kids like going to this school? How are the teachers? How do they like their teachers? How engaged are the teachers? Would you choose the school again? Why or why not? What surprised you in a good way? What surprised you in a bad way? Is there anything that you feel like everybody ought to know about this? Are there things that the school is keeping hidden, if you will? And just, again, people that are actually in it are going to be a lot more both honest, but also they can just share so much more information than anybody else possibly could. And then, again, look at final step is, as you're narrowing it down, my personal, because I'm just so passionate about education, what I advocate for is look at sure academically, but also socially, and then interest extracurricular wise, what is going to be the best fit for for your loved ones. So I think I was going to add something here about Charlotte Neighborhoods Quick Guide. Ronald types common mistakes. I'm just checking my notes. 1 second. I'm gonna end the video here. I'll just add, if you got any specific questions about neighborhood specific schools, how boundaries or applications or timelines or anything else work, drop them down in the chat. I'm gonna put up here a couple of different things. If you're still trying to just explore different neighborhoods, you can take the Charlotte Areas Quiz. It will give you a specific list of areas that fit what you're looking for, that based on what you're looking for could be a fit, and it narrows down the research a lot. Just giving you some ideas of things to research. You can scan the QR code or the link is below to go check that out. And also, I was going to add one other thing. There's also a link to where you can book a call below as well too. If you are thinking about making a move, or are actively coming to visit sometime soon, go check that out. Book a call with me. I'd be happy to hop on. Again, talk through some areas and things that will match what you're looking for, but most importantly, give you an itinerary of specific spots to check out, things to do, all that sort of stuff to get the full feel and full flavor for all the different areas that you're looking at. And most importantly, you're already making the trip, right? It's a big investment. It takes a lot of time, so you might as well be getting the most out of it. And I've helped dozens and dozens of people over the past, even just the past year, let alone the past 4 years, have a really productive trip, and we've gotten some really good feedback for it. So go book a call as well if that is something, in the next month or 6 months you're thinking about making a visit. And my name's Lucas Roller, your trusted realtor here in the beautiful Queen City. And as always, until next time, hope to show you around town. And one final thing too, if you're not sure where you are in the process, follow me on Instagram. I post a lot of stuff both about lifestyle and just real estate in general on my Instagram at Lucas Roller. Right there. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.